Welcome to Lesson 5, Getting Started and Next Steps. I'm your instructor, Nathan Kinch. In this lesson we'll cover, number 1, an overview of the switching formula, where it comes from, and how we've evolved it. Number 2, an overview of the most common progress-making and progress-hindering forces from both our experience and observation. Number 3, how we use the canvas to better understand an organization's unique context and design for positive change. By the end of this lesson, you'll have developed a better understanding of some of the primary forces that discourage progress towards operational approaches to data ethics. You'll have a better understanding of the common pushback that you and so many others might face when attempting to make progress. And number 3, you'll have greater confidence to get started doing tiny stuff that builds upon what's already working really well today. Operationalizing data ethics is a team effort. We covered this in the last lesson. Since then, we trust that you've managed to have some great discussions with your colleagues. But there's always the challenge that our intent isn't matched with our behavior. And this is the very reason that we focus so much and advocate so strongly for skills-based approaches to operationalizing data ethics and distinct approaches to behavior design. So let's talk about switching. An organization is really just a legal fiction. But when you think about it, what's most important is that it's a group of people working together to achieve desired outcomes. The people, their ideas, and their behaviors are what make an organization what it is. Now today, most organizations across the board support the status quo. Some, however, are changing their behavior. Through these behavioral changes, organizations are enhancing their trustworthiness by designing, by implementing, and by optimizing more operational approaches to data ethics. The switching formula builds upon a body of research from the social sciences. The formula was first introduced by the Rewired Group and was primarily used to help companies better understand what influences product switching decisions, consumer product switching decisions, so that they could better design those switching moments in the favor of the organization. Now, we've built upon this formula to develop the switching canvas. It has 4 quadrants and 2 levels. The top level represents forces that encourage behavior changes away from something old and towards something new. The bottom level represents forces that discourage behavior changes towards something new. Now, we use this canvas to help organizations deepen their understanding and design for change more effectively. So let's bring the canvas to life by talking about some of the most prominent progress-hindering forces that we observe in relation to operational approaches to data ethics. The first, we could comfortably pop into the inertia category. In short, most organizations today don't do the stuff that we are proposing they consider doing. The status quo bias plays out here. And unfortunately, this actively discourages organizations from trying new stuff. In the context of anxiety, which is of course directly related to inertia forces, the uncertainty of new and the fear of being more transparent, more vulnerable, more exposed is almost crippling in many contexts. And this anxiety, as with inertia, discourages operational approaches to data ethics. Speaking frankly, we really could go on for days about progress hindering forces. As of right now, across the board, they far outweigh the progress making forces. And this is probably why many observers, speculators, and activists are calling out the market for ethics washing. But what about the good stuff? What about the stuff that we can tap into as an accelerant of progress towards more operational approaches? Let's talk about that. Starting with the push. Now, perhaps the best example of a prominent push force right now is, rather unfortunately from our perspective, regulation. But there's also demand from the market more generally. Folks, they want and expect better. They want openness and transparency. They want to observe and experience behavioral qualities of trustworthiness. All right, what about pull? Well, a decent example of this that's pretty high profile is the Apple versus Facebook battle. Apple's pushing hard to try and differentiate, attempting to better explain their ethical data practices. Their day in the life of your data report is an interesting demonstration of that. So why are they doing this? Well, they see more ethical data practices as a distinct competitive advantage. They are attempting to demonstrate the gap that exists between what they say they do and what much of the market does today. And what we think is that they hope this enhances people's understanding and perhaps even changes people's behavior in support of Apple. Although we've called out the fact that as of today, the progress hindering forces far outweigh the progress making forces, tackling those hindrances directly can be really tough. So instead, we'd like to encourage you to focus on the stuff that's already working. But before we talk about how, let's quickly cover the canvas and its practical use. We use this canvas most frequently in workshop settings. They're mostly virtual nowadays. But that's not to say that this can't be done with a really small team or even as an activity by yourself. The idea is pretty simple. We map out all of the progress making and progress hindering forces as we can identify them. It might go without saying, but the more people involved, the more diverse these forces tend to be. We then tackle each of the forces that we've identified one by one. For the progress making forces, we propose specific tactics that we hypothesize have the potential to amplify those forces in favor of the progress that we seek. It's the opposite for progress hindering forces. For these forces, we propose specific tactics that we hypothesize will counteract the negativity and help us, on balance, make more meaningful progress towards our very own operational approach to data ethics.